Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week our guest is famed journalist of the New York Times, Tom Edsall. Now remember, we love taking your questions, so write to politicswarroom@gmail.com for next week's show. We'll get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can also get text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at Politicon.com. So tell your friends about us, remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please check out the links to our sponsors, Miracle Made, and our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting our sponsors. It really helps make this podcast happen. Hey, James, we've known all along that the Trump administration, taking the cue from its leader, is craven, that it's corrupt. This week reinforced the notion they also are shockingly incompetent. I mean, shockingly incompetent. A judge threw out the political revenge indictments of James Comey and Letitia James as the U.S. attorney Trump and Bond hastily arranged wasn't legally appointed and botched up the charges anyway. I don't ever remember an embarrassment this bad for the Department of Justice. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, a man whose character may be lower than his competence, it's a close call, went ballistic when 6 congressional Democrats, all national security veterans, put out a video telling military personnel they shouldn't obey illegal orders. Now, you can argue whether that was a good idea or a bad idea, but if a soldier or sailor obeys an illegal order, he or she faces court-martial or prosecution. I mean, that's a simple matter of military law. The administration is trying to make this a federal case. Hegseth is threatening to call Senator Mark Kelly, a decorated Navy veteran, an astronaut, back to active duty so he can court-martial him. Court-martial Mark Kelly, a decorated Navy veteran astronaut. Republicans have called Hegseth's threat amateur hour and stupid. Republicans have. Finally, a leaked document, a leaked telephone call, thanks to Bloomberg, showed Trump's Russian envoy, Steve Witkoff, a real estate guy, coaching the Russians on how to get a leg up on Trump and the Ukrainians. Republican Congressman Don Bacon, I'm not making this stuff up, a retired Air Force general, said a Russian agent couldn't have been more helpful. Witkoff ought to be fired. You know, Vladimir Putin is a tough, mean, a ruthless, but a very smart thug. And he runs circles around these amateurs. And Trump, if it would help him, would sell out Ukraine in a flash. If it weren't so dangerous, you could do a satire on this, kind of get a Zero Mostel type, do Springtime for Trump. It really has been, I've never seen a week like this when it comes to incompetence.
Well, first of all, in a press conference that Senator Kelly and the rest of them had, I don't think it's controversial. I think it's 100% legitimate. I think that each one of those veterans, each one are really, really accomplished. I think Ruben is at the law school or something like that. I know Jason was a lawyer. And they didn't do this off the cuff. They knew exactly what they were doing. And this was exactly being directed at people because I guarantee you, at the rate they're going, people are going to get not one, but multiple illegal orders. And this was
direct. They may be getting some now. You're right.
Yeah, I don't think it. I think it was the 100% right thing to do on every level, 100%. And what they said was what's in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I have no idea if that you could be called back to service if you repeat. It's like like repeating your general orders or something like that. So my hat's off to them. I think all of these people are all combat veterans. But Mark Kelly, you ought to see it. You ought to look at the fruit salad he's gotten. I mean, I've been in his face 4 times. You know what it is to do that, to pass that? I mean, my hat's off to them, and they might have to do some more before this is over. But I think I'm 100% behind them and what they did.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Hegseth is not only out of his depth. I mean, this is a really disreputable character. I mean, you'll recall he was a drunk. He says he's giving up drinking. We don't know. But when I'm not a moralist, James, but this was a guy who was married for the second time. While married, he then got another woman pregnant, who's now his third wife, and at the same time was accused of sexually assaulting a woman at a conference. I mean, this is not only the worst Secretary of Defense we've ever had. He's also has less character than anyone we've ever had in that post. So for him to be after Mark Kelly's incredible. Let me make one more comment. The flavor du jour, going back to the Ukraine issue, the flavor du jour of the gang that can't shoot straight is Army Secretary Dan Driscoll. He's a big pal of his Yale Law School classmate, J.D. Vance. I don't know him, but there are a lot of things that leave me more than a little bit concerned. He ran for Congress in 2020. He's a North Carolinian, a state I love, but he finished a distant sixth to Madison Cawthorn, one of the most inept Republican candidates we've ever seen. Much worse, as Army Secretary this year, he withdrew the West Point appointment of Jen Esterly, a cybersecurity expert, Republican and Democratic administrations, West Point graduate, distinguished veteran. Why did he withdraw it? Because Laura Loomer, the conspiracy nut, said she was unacceptable. Now, if you can't stand up to Laura Loomer, I don't expect Dan Driscoll to stand up to Vladimir Putin.
Well, one of the things I do sometimes is like I fantasize about what would happen if such and such met such and such. How much would you pay to see a no holds barred fight between Pete Hegseth and Jason Crow? You know how long? You know how long Pete Hegseth would last? Maybe a half a second. Jason was in the 75th Ranger Regiment.
Wait. Would Hegseth be drunk or sober in that fight?
He'd be hungover. Be my guess. He's either drunk or hungover. There's only two state of mind he'd be. And I think if they agreed to do this, I think they could do like Bob Hope, go do the troops in Korea and see how fast Pete Hegseth can get his stupid ass whipped. These people they're just a pack of nothings. And that this guy, Secretary of Defense, in lecturing people and lecturing these 3, I don't know how many gazillion star people, lecturing Mark Kelly or Rubin or Melissa Slotkin and these people it's just, they have no, you got to understand this. These people have no shame. They have no shame. They're incapable of being embarrassed. And because when you're that trashy, you don't even know how trashy you are or how trashy you sound. That's what I think. The whole lot of them. They're just beyond embarrassed.
Well, you're right, James. Any normal week, there's no such thing as a normal week in this administration. We would not, we would be focusing on that incredible Justice Department screw up that caused the judge to throw out those politically charged indictments against Comey and James. I mean, we say that's incredible. It doesn't happen. I talk about a gang that can't shoot straight. This is the most inept as well as corrupt Justice Department we've ever seen. But that's sort of the third story, because Hegseth and that Witkoff. I mean, you read that Witkoff message to his telephone call with his Russian counterpart. Here's how you handle Trump. And, what we ought to do, we really ought to make sure that Putin talks to Trump before Zelensky sees him. I mean, I don't ever recall a diplomat engaged in activity like that. And as I said, Don Bacon, a retired Air Force general, said a Russian agent couldn't have done a better job.
Well, how do you know he's not I don't know, say somebody is what? Are we sure that he's not a Russian agent? Does he have business backgrounds with maybe the Times or the Post or one of these people can do a deep dive? Who was Steve Witkoff? How did he make his money? Who did he make his money with? What conflicts does he have? Does he have any experience in dealing with Russian oligarchs? I mean, these are questions I think that we'd like to have an answer to. I think they demand answers.
Well, I mean, the one thing that I can predict, I think, with certainty, if you take a situation which is not as hypothetical as it might be, where Trump could go and force some kind of a truce on Zelensky and Ukraine, and it would be a short-term thing. Trump would get a lift out of it, and it'll be a long-term disaster, threaten all of Europe. Trump would take that deal in a minute. In a minute, he'd take that deal.
He's not going to get a lift out of anything. Okay.
Yeah.
So even he didn't get shipped for the Middle East stuff. He's not, and whatever this is, it's going to, he's going to get tracked because Russia is not going to stop. They're going to prove to themselves that the United States wouldn't pony up in its commitment to Ukraine. They're going to make some, maybe some bullshit thing, and he's just going to do whatever the hell he wants. But there ain't no lift coming to him. You don't have to worry.
Well, the great story was there was a 28-point plan that just said, hey, Russia, here's everything you have. What do you want? Take it. And then there became a debate as to who wrote the plan. Did the Russians write the plan, or did Witkoff and his pals write the plan over there? I think, James, that's not a debate. It's very simple. They both wrote it. They wrote it together. It's just, if it weren't so tragic, if it weren't, the stakes weren't so big.
Some linguist claims that you can tell in a translation, you get a pretty good idea of the original language. I don't know how it's done. I don't know if this guy is legit, but I did see this, that it was almost certainly translated from Russian. Now, I would bring that up not to say that this happened or anything like that, but there are people that speculate that. And again, I think that a deep dive into Mr. Witkoff's past is called for here because it might explain some of his actions in the present.
Well, it may well be, and I just want to say, as I say, in the eye of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and all that kind of cliches. Now they're saying, well, Dan Driscoll's going to take this over. Driscoll's got anybody who can't stand up to Laura Loomer when there is a distinguished West Point appointment. I mean, do you really want him in the same room with Vladimir Putin, James? I mean, really?
My question to you is, why is he any worse than any of these other fools? I mean, there's a point where you become a fool. I guess you can be a bigger fool. There's gradations of fools. But my general point is, ain't none of them any good. And whoever they put in is going to be no good. And if you're working with Trump and you're still working for him, the chances are you're no good.
Well, certainly a sorry lot. The one other thing, one other colossal incompetence this week is Trump now says, okay, fine, we'll extend Obamacare for 2 years and we'll try to fix it while we're doing it, fix it beforehand. This is a guy who said this is the worst plan that ever existed, that it is injurious, all which is not true, by the way, where healthcare is much better today than it was 15 years ago before Obamacare was enacted. There are some flaws, to be sure, cost and other things, in part because Republicans wouldn't play along with fixing it. And now he says, we'll do that. And the Republicans on Capitol Hill are saying, wait a goddamn minute. We ran against this stuff because of you. I mean, it is as comical and as sad as all the other stuff. They ain't going to fix the Affordable Health Care.
It's so comical. And of course, if you look at the entire thing, and Trump said he was going to replace Obamacare with something terrific, then he said, who knew that health care was so hard? Then they all voted against it. John McCain had put his thumb down, if you remember that. He literally saved the Republican Party by doing that. They didn't know it. And it's now become this thing that they don't know how to get rid of because it's too big, too many people rely on it. And now Trump is saying, well, let's just do 2 years. Well, that gets you past the election. So maybe we can just make this go away. Remember, the whole government shutdown was about extending the subsidies, through a short period of time. So they're just falling under their own weight. And by the way, a election alert. There's a special, I think, in Tennessee 7, which is a kind of a part of
Right.
national. Trump
Big,
carried the
big
district
Republican district.
about 22 points. And let's just see what that comes in. And I'm also told as a Miami mayor's race, which the Democrats hadn't had in a long time. Let's see where these go. But we just got to keep watching these elections because they come in so breathtakingly over. Democratic opponents breathtakingly over. Let's see if it continues.
Well, the final point I would make is the New York Times had a pretty good story about how our dear leader is slipping cognitively. He's slipping. He's falling asleep. His energy isn't what it once was. This White House is really kind of doing a replay of what the Biden people did. May not be quite as obvious, but this guy's an old man, James.
Well, first of all, I got news for you. I'm an old man. You're an old man. I know a lot of other old men. You know what does not happen in these kind of issues? It doesn't get better. Okay?
Oh, James, tell me that. Really?
He's 1 year into this, and he's about where President Biden was in the beginning of year 3. All right? He is not. I mean, the Times wrote the story. You knew this was coming. Somebody had to comment on it. He doesn't even know where he is half the time. And again, I got news for you. He ain't going to get better. It only gets worse. There's no getting off it. And this story is now, he's aware of it. Okay, he went crazy at Katie Rogers, I guess. And she's a very good reporter. I've talked to her. She's called me on a couple of stories in the past. She's a very nice, thorough person. I don't know her that well. And he went crazy because he knows it's the truth. And now, and once you start saying that, once you say, people don't think I'm have balance, or people think that I fall asleep too much, then you try to counter that. And he's not going to be able to counter it. And it's going to drive him crazy. Right. And I hope that he tries to run down steps like Obama. What that crazy stuff he's talking about, he didn't like Obama. That guy could really go down a flight of steps. You ever see him, man? He just goes right down those steps like that. And what you need to do, Mr. President, is try to run down some steps so we can all watch your fat ass fall.
Oh, James, watch it. I don't want him to do that, and then we get J.D. Vance. I mean, as bad
I don't
as
want
it
you
is,
to
I'm not
die.
sure.
I just want you to fall and do a face plant. Everybody laugh at you. I don't want anybody to get sick. I don't want anybody to get shot. I don't want any of that. But what I like to see is fat ass tumbling down those steps. Yeah, I would.
Okay, this is really a very depressing week, and I think we're going to have a lot more of these weeks. So,
don't be depressed.
Yeah.
We want a bunch of elections. We got stuff coming up. They're caught.
Well, it's not depressing. It's not depressing for Democrats. It's depressing because these things matter. It matters, the Ukraine-Russia negotiations. It matters whether you have an honest Justice Department.
Yeah.
It matters that you have a total rogue as a defense secretary. So that's why I'm depressed, James. I don't disagree with your optimism.
But one thing it does, it matters that people see what buffoonery and in a complete lack of ethical behavior will bring. And hopefully the good that'll come out of all this, I don't know of a lot of bad because a lot of people are dead. But the good that'll come out of this is it'll make people more interested and involved in their government. I hope. That's can't tell you that that's going to happen, but that's the hope.
Well, let's hope.
Sleep clean and comfortable with Miracle. Well, sheets are the most important thing that you can imagine to get a good night's sleep because that's what your body is in contact with. So you think about this. Ideally, you want to get somewhere at maybe 7 hours a night. It's pretty good. Well, that means your body is in contact with sheets for 750 hours a week. So, I mean, just do the math and you would see why wouldn't you want the most comfortable sheet you can have? You want the most comfortable underwear you can have. You want the most comfortable socks you can have. Why wouldn't you want the most comfortable sheets? You spend about as much time in sheets as you do anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, if you ever wake up sweaty, freezing, or just uncomfortable, just take it from James. The temperature in your bedroom can make or break your sleep. That's why you need. That's why you need to switch to Miracle Made sheets. They're inspired by NASA technology and use silver-infused temperature-regulating fabric to help you sleep perfectly all night long. Sleeping at the right temperature is a critical way to feel rested the next day, and Miracle Sheets truly give you maximum comfort in any weather. Now, better yet, they make pillowcases and comforters. Plus, thanks to their antibacterial silver technology, Miracle Sheets require 3 times less laundry because they stay clean and fresh 3 times longer. Not only is that fewer wash cycles, it's great for your skin. Hidden bacteria can clog your pores and cause acne. So sleep cleaner and clearer with Miracle. Now, trust us, with no more gross odors, life's going to be a whole lot better for your household. Join us in getting better sleep every night. Not only are Miracle Sheets smooth, breathable, and ridiculously comfortable, they don't have the very steep price tag of other luxury brands. Miracle Sheets feel nicer than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels. So it's a vacation every time you get in bed. I imagine myself back in Italy, but it's your call. Drift off to dreamland and wake up at the perfect temperature every time you get into bed. Choose Miracle and upgrade your sleep or give the gift of better rest. Go to trymiracle.com/warroom to try Miracle Made sheets today. You'll save over 40%, and when you use the promo code War Room, you'll get an extra 20% off plus a free 3-piece towel set. They make an amazing gift, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk. That's trymiracle.com/War Room. Code War Room at checkout. Thanks to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode, and the link, by the way, is in our show notes. Thomas Edsall of the New York Times is one of the best writers and deepest thinkers in American journalism and has been for years. Tom, you wrote a fascinating recent piece about the split among Republicans. One catalyst is the Tucker Carlson interview with Nick Fuentes, who I think can be called a neo-Nazi. And in your piece, I think that split was best exemplified by J.D. Vance, who's trying to walk that line between what they call the gropers and more establishment republicanism. Talk about that piece and what you think the significance is for the Republicans.
Well, the one focus of the piece was on this J.D. Vance problem, which is really a larger problem for him because he's trying to have his foot in every camp in the Republican Party at the same time, and it inevitably is going to cause some tension and conflict. But in this one, it became pretty blatant because the accusation against the Tucker Carlson interview was that he was publicizing an anti-Semitic Nazi sympathizer. And Vance basically equivocated, and worse than equivocated, he dismissed it, and in a worse incident, which Politico reported on, where a collection of young Republicans were sending very anti-Semitic, anti-Black messages back and forth on a internal message system. Vance's response was, "Well, kids will be kids. They just do things.
Yeah.
That's the way things are." And not recognizing that these were not kids. These are people 24 to age 40. That's the group, if you want to be a young Republican, that they go after. And they also, just dismissing what was really pretty grotesque and actually much more serious in a sense than the Tucker Carlson interview.
He said he didn't want to do pearl clutching.
Say it again.
He said he didn't want to do pearl clutching
I know.
to these anti-Semites.
I think J.D. Vance is well, he may work it out. He is clearly the front runner for the vice presidential nomination now. And if you look at what may be sort of the new Republican establishment, the different constituencies that have emerged since Trump took office, that really now have a similar role to what the old Republican Chamber of Commerce types had. Vance is promoting himself in every one of those and is actually doing pretty well. Within the Republican Party, he does not seem to be paying any kind of price at this moment for his compromised attitude towards anti-Semitism.
Well, yeah, and it does. He is the personification, I guess, of this split. But your piece in the fight over Carlson and Fuentes, which obviously Donald Trump also said, "Hey, it's just free speech." We didn't know that Donald Trump cared a lot about free speech, but it really is a division in this party that's going to be. It's going to be very hard to bridge that difference at some stage. You would think, Tom.
Well, certainly there's the Republican Jewish Coalition. Ted Cruz is trying to capitalize on this in his sort of pre-planned attempt to compete for the nomination in 2028, and has strongly attacked this. But what's really striking in a way, though, is how little traction Cruz has had in his attempt to put Vance down on this subject. He really has remained a fringe character in this whole debate. And it actually shows, I think, an even more serious problem is that the anti-Semitism issue does not seem to be playing that well, except in Jewish quarters of the Republican Party.
Yeah. I call Fuentes a fringe character. To me, he is, but he has a sizable following, I gather, among young right-wingers.
Well, there's this whole emergence now of the belief that many young conservative activists are really, if not Fuentes sympathizers, they are very similar in their view towards anti-Semitism. They are really how would you describe it? They're kind of nihilists. They are Nietzschean kind of groypers is a word that captures it. And they are, by estimates, 30 to 40% of the kids that you see in like Bullfeather's restaurant here in Washington, D.C. and in other locales. They are a very growing and strong constituency, and this is the youth of the party. So,
well, another also central to some of this is Christian nationalism. I mean, it sounds benign, but it really is not. Tell us. I mean, and there's a fair amount of anti-Semitism among Christian nationalists. Tell us about what a driving force that is in some of its characters.
Well, the Christian nationalists have become increasingly strong with the belief that the United States really should be a Christian nation. It's also there are others besides just the Christian nationalists that believe that the majority religion should be the religion, like of a state, and that Israel is fine being a Jewish state. America should be a Christian state, and part of this, it's a very mixed bag. Some Christian nationalists are hostile to Israelis and Jews because they're not Christian. Another segment sees them as an ally and a constituency that needs to be supported. On that score, that's really on the question of Israel. There is a real split within the Republican Party and a key constituency.
Yeah, and some of them think that we're supporting them because we can convert them at some stage, which I find most Jews are not very hospitable to. James Carville?
Well, thank you. So, Tom, this is something that like drives me crazy. I don't know if you share this. People will say, "Yeah, they got these Nazis, and they're like part of the Republican Party." But James, look, you got these Columbia students, these pro-Hamas people. Well, there's a difference. I'm sorry. The Nazis, Fuentes and these in Gracie and all these people, they are Republicans. The Columbia students are not Democrats. They were protesting Joe Biden. And now it's become the smart cocktail party thing to say, well, they got their extremes, you got your extremes. What the fuck's the difference? Well, there's all the difference in the world.
Well, I agree with you. There's all that difference.
How big is the pro-Nazi contingent? If all the pro-Nazis left the Republican Party, how big of a bite would that take out of their coalition?
They would not win national elections.
Correct. And the point that they can't say anything is they need these people. Okay? They need them in the coalition. The Democrats can win elections without the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party, which is mostly non-existent, because even if they are, they're not Democrats. And I just think it's a distinction with a difference. I really do. So I want to ask you about this Christian nationalism and this whole thing, and I'll get you take your time and respond. I think at the core of all of this, and every time I read it, if you stick with it long enough, it's really, and this sounds crazy, all right? If you think I'm crazy, tell me I'm crazy. It's primarily a resentment against the Enlightenment, that the world would have been better off if we'd have never had the Enlightenment. That's why they don't like the Ken Burns movie. I mean, the founders were all sons or part of the Enlightenment. And I don't know, do you think that theory holds any water?
Well, there is a whole wing of conservative intellectual thinking, Patrick Deneen and others, who do see, if you view liberalism as a product of the Enlightenment, who see liberalism as fundamentally faulty, and in that sense, the Enlightenment fits into this, that the idea that the individual is central, that individual freedom is important, they see that as an attack on community and an attack on sort of the religious communal nature of society, and they see that as basically an assault on core values. They do see the whole Enlightenment process leading to the liberalism of the 20th century as a clear negative that needs to be excised and eliminated. And that's where they sort of overlap with the Christian nationalists. And
okay, so that's again, that's why they don't like the founders. I mean, they would like to go back, correct me if I'm wrong, to something like the divine right of kings, that there's an order established from above on the world. People should just act like they're all part of that divinely inspired order.
Well, they get a little fuzzy because that's a hard sell politically, then they know it. So they fuzz around on that basic issue. I don't think you're going to find them saying we should return to a monarchy, but implicitly what they're saying is we need to restore an order, and it has to have a very strong executive. That's what this whole part of the executive priority theory is that they push. And it needs someone who controls and rules, someone who has the power to set both political, social, economic and cultural standards for the country.
Well, I think
The-
I think what you just described is the divine right of kings. They might not going to call it a king, but
no,
that
I
was
know.
the,
I'm not arguing with your with the word. I'm just saying that they're too smart to say divine right of kings.
I understand, but it's all that we're all sinful, rotten people, and we need to have somebody like govern us and whip us back into shape and in their idea of what we should be.
You can see that.
And we should, a bunch of people out educating themselves and thinking and writing and all that other bullshit that Jefferson and all of them did. That's what I think they think.
Well, sometimes you can see the logic of it. If you look at Al Hunt, for example, there's a lot that could be done to improve his moral standing. But
I've tried to live up to Edsall for so many years, but it's such a challenge, James. It's so hard. Oh,
So how did so is Vance their kind of guy right now? I mean, is this whole thing? It's not going away. Is he going to like carry the torch for this which I call majority wing of the Republican Party, but whatever it is he that guy? Or is there going to be a fight over that post Trump or what?
I think there'll be a fight, but I think Vance looks very strong right now. If you look at all these groups, there's a very good book. You should have the author on your show, Laura Fairchild, if you haven't already.
Laura Fields.
Laura Field. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm trying to get her. I'm going to buy her book right now.
She's written a really good book that breaks down the sort of the dominant forces in the MAGA world. And if you look at those forces, they really are. Vance has got a leg up in every one of them. And he has that's what he's been doing as vice president, is cultivating the centers of power under Trump. And if they do have the power to define the nominee, which they may or may not, but they might, they certainly don't hurt. He is really the guy who I think we're going to have. And if nothing else, he's an equivocator supreme. To maintain these four groups together, his basic strategy is if you're to the right of us, you're with us. And it's basically an approach of toleration of extremes so you don't alienate any one single body. And the Republican Party, as James pointed out, depends, in order to win a majority, it depends on some pretty screwball groups to put that majority together. And it can't afford to alienate them. Trump recognized this early on with his remarks about the march in Charlottesville. These guys marching down saying Jews will not replace us. And he says, well, there's some pretty fine guys there. It's a coalition that depends on toleration.
Yeah. Albert, go ahead.
Tom, there's been so much written about this administration's anti-Semitism task force at Justice, the White House, and they've gone after all these elite universities. I think that's just their excuse. I don't remember anything, this so-called crusade against anti-Semitism. I don't remember any criticism of the Christian nationalists, any criticism of the anti-Semites. As you say, J.D. Vance kind of excused them in New York. I mean, this anti-Semitism effort on the part of this administration is all just a political game, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they found something that they can put a name to, that they claim Democrats have tolerated anti-Semitism, or liberal institutions have, and they use it as a vehicle to go after the institutions. It's a pretty transparent, sleazy proposition. And the problem is that the institutions, they face such severe threats in some cases that they cave. And instead of really taking it all the way to the courts and the ability of this administration to do things, Trump basically acts and just waits for someone to stop him. He doesn't act with preparation, getting a whole case made. He just simply defunds Harvard, or he threatens to take away the access to federal court systems from law firms. He does this, and then he lets to see what happens after that. So it's really he's a tough guy to take on.
Well, he's a bully, and the minute you give in to a bully, the bully comes back for more, which I think is what some of these law firms are going to find out, as opposed to those that fought him and won. But Tom, let's get back to all of our roots. Politics. Significance of the 2025 elections, in your view?
Well, I myself was impressed with this guy, Mandami, more than the two Virginia victories, the Virginia and New Jersey victories. I think Mandami showed the ability to mobilize people who were angry at the Democratic Party. And there are a lot of people, including many Democrats, who are not happy with the party, and they need to have a cause, in a sense. And I think he tapped into something there where there's this ability to awaken large segments of the Democratic Party that are depressed and angry and sort of non-functional at this point. If you can give them something to motivate them. And one way to motivate them is to build their anger in the same sense that James was writing about in the New York Times, but the anger specifically at the Democratic Party and its old leadership, excluding James, of course.
Well, I was going to ask you what you thought about that New Kids column in the New York Times the other day. What's his name? Carville, huh? Is he a competitor now for you?
I was very upset to see this some guy coming in here trying to kick my ass.
Talk about the column, Tom.
I as I say, I agree with the column in its entirety, except that I think you have to add for motivation this anger at the party itself among Democrats. And I think if anger is a crucial factor, Democrats have a big problem with anger. They're not really an angry party, whereas the electorate itself is a much more angry constituency. And I think Trump has capitalized on anger like crazy. And my only, as I say, my only addendum to James's column would be that candidates should really focus on not just reform of the Democratic Party, but anger at what past leaders have done to undermine the party.
James?
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, the headline said outward woke and inward rage. So, I mean, I guess there's some rage or some element. But I think that this is where I'm going to go a little bit different. I don't think that the Democrats can unify, can express themselves adequately until we have a presidential nominee. And I also, well, I think Mandami did activate people. He was a Democrat. He got 50%. I don't think, like in Maine, in Ohio, or North Carolina, or Iowa, or Alaska, that these candidates are going to ask Mandami to come in and campaign with them. They may very well ask Spanberger or Sherrill to come in and campaign with them. And while I think Mandami does speak to something, I don't know how well he speaks to Democrats outside of large urban areas. That to me is something to be seen.
I don't argue that Mandami has national replicability. I'm just saying that the strategy of his campaign of mobilizing people who were who were liberal, democratic-leaning, mobilized, but non-participants. He did that effectively. And that model of just mobilizing the disaffected. I'm not saying Mandami, the country's not a democratic socialist country, of course, but if you see a lot of evidence that outsiders seem to be doing much better than you would expect them to do. And the outsider character of his campaign, I think, has value and potential for new candidates coming along. And I think there is an untapped or really a stalled constituency in the party that the party has allowed to become depressed and disgruntled and really outside the system, that really ought to be mobilized by any new candidate. And doing so does require, part of the ingredient is anger or rage, whatever you want to call it. And I think rage at the old Democratic Party is a legitimate source or legitimate thing to tap into.
Thank you, and thank you for your kind endorsement of the column. But I think you do agree that generally we should move culturally more toward the center and economically to be more progressive.
I agree with all. Ideologically, I'm not.
Okay, I understand. Good. I'll take a Tom Edsall endorsement anytime.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you.
Anytime we get two great New York Times columnists back to back, we're in Fat City. Hey, Tom, thank you. It was always great having you on.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
And a very, very, very happy Thanksgiving to you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I'm going to get the Law Feud book now.
Hey, now for the outrage of the week. Doge is dead. Long live its death. The much-trumpeted Department of Government Efficiency, led by uber-rich Elon Musk, was going to slash government to the bone, bring business practices to Washington, and make government work. Strike, strike, strike on all three. After less than 10 months, it's officially or not out of business. It claimed it was going to cut more than $2 trillion from government spending. It now claims 10% of that figure, which almost itself is an exaggeration. It did bully some decent people. It violated privacy. And Musk generally made a fool of himself, proving once again the government is different than Tesla or most other private enterprises. There always are ways to increase government efficiencies or decrease inefficient government practices. Al Gore did it more than 30 years ago. Now, people who understood the realities of that, like Elaine Kmark or John DeJulio, predicted Musk would fail. Boy, did he ever fail. Good riddance.
Yeah, he failed because one of the things is, there's a lot of fraud. Federal government. I'm sure there's fraud and everything. So most of what the federal government is a army. It's a retirement system that has an army and services debt. When you take debt service and you take all of the social insurance, Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, you remove all that, You're not really left with that much in terms of, the parks and the FAA and that kind of stuff. So you can certainly find things, but they're never going to be huge, not ever. And we don't level with people and say this is sure you want to be as efficient as you can, but just understand going into it the savings that we're going to get are going to be pretty. Let me. Reagan used to do waste, fraud, abuse. Oh yeah, goddamn, we could balance the budget and give every American $5,000 check if we just cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse.
Have you ever had a candidate who campaigned being for waste, fraud, and abuse?
Never had one, to tell you the truth. It's not a popular thing, but it's like having It's just not, there's not a lot there. And I never had a candidate that said, well, we can look into waste, fraud, and abuse, but we're probably not going to find that much. But I mean, what Gore did, he took his time. I mean, they looked at the whole reorganizing, they call it REGO or something like that. And he had, Elaine was on the staff. I mean, he had really competent people. He was a very highly competent man. Of course, my own view, the election of 2000 was the beginning of the decline of modern United States. But yes, that happens all the time. For my outrage, the president of Colombia said that the reason that Trump was going into Venezuela was because of oil. Now, what I'd like to do is bring our audience into this conversation, because when I saw that, I'd worked in Venezuela, so I knew something about it, been there, I don't know, numerous times, and I knew they had a lot of oil. And if you go and you type in countries with highest proven oil reserves, just Wikipedia, that somebody, you'll see everything will come up. And so the way that you measure it the best, and for the way that they do, if it makes sense, is how long will your proven reserves last? And it is, to have a proven reserve, there's some kind of geological hoops you got to go through. Saudi Arabia, I don't know, is 124 years or something like that. In Venezuela, it's 885 years. The place is floating in oil. They don't produce that much because they're just not that good at it. And that's why Trump is doing that. This country, by far, not by combination of the next three countries put together. I mean, Saudi Arabia, Iraq or Canada or anything like that, or the United States, we produce more oil than anybody else right now, at 13 million barrels a day. 885 years that they could go in there and steal. And that's what they look at. No, shit, they don't export drugs that much or anything like that. But what they have is massive, humongous, unbelievable oil reserves. And just look it up, and you'll see for yourself exactly what the answer is. They're doing it for the oil.
Wow. Okay, now for our listener questions, as good as ever. The first, James, is from Barbara in Aiken, South Carolina. She asked if you think Liz Cheney would ever consider being an independent, but elaborate more. What's Liz Cheney's future the next couple of years, and a role, if any, she can play in American politics?
Well, first of all, she endorsed Kamala Harris. Okay, she campaigned with her. All right? Her dad, I was at the memorial service. Not only was Nancy Pelosi there, I sat literally next to my wife, sat next to Alexandra Pelosi and two of her children. All right, so that's how much that the Chinese think of the Pelosi's, that they had no family there. And look, my fantasy ticket, I know it's not going to happen, et cetera, but my fantasy ticket would be Mitch Landrieu for president, Liz Cheney for vice president. My slogan would be, because somebody has to take out the garbage. All right? But you can, I think that there's an excellent chance that Liz will be a player of some kind in the 2028 election. And I think she's going to continue to be a player in future American politics. Now, whether that's as a reform Republican or an independent or Democrat or anything else, I don't suppose to know. But I think she has a future in American politics, either on a national ticket or even more likely as a cabinet member. If I was a Democratic president, I would certainly consider her strongly for Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State or anything like that. I really would.
Yeah. James, Chris in West Chicago, Illinois, asked, what's going on with Marjorie Taylor Greene? Should you bring her onto the Politics War Room to find out? Marjorie, if you're listening, we will have you on anytime. We'd love to have you on. I think she's, circumstances change, conditions change, and I think she changed. I think she found it very easy to be an outside guerrilla warrior saying all kinds of outrageous things, and she has said some horrible, horrible things. And I think once MAGA took over and they got power, she saw the hypocrisy in some of it. And she talked about she has some sons in Georgia, and they're having a hell of a time getting health insurance. So I think she probably thought that she was going to be passed over in the MAGA movement. She was going to be, and it was just better to get out. But I would love to have her on the show anytime, James.
Absolutely. So first of all, I think, I'm being an amateur psychiatrist here, but I think those survivors of the Epstein stuff that met when he's congressman, a lot of them Republicans met with him. I think she was affected by that. I really did.
I do too.
And you don't know.
I do too.
I'm not suggesting there's anything in her past that she's ever been, had unwarranted advances. Maybe that has something to do with it. Her district is getting clobbered by Trump policies. I know that district is basically northwest Georgia. Think of Chattanooga suburbs, maybe some northern and western Atlanta suburbs. Like I know Berry College is in there, which is the largest college campus in the entire United States. They're not even close. And they're heavily reliant on Medicaid, Medicare. They're heavily reliant on SNAP. It's not a particularly, it's very white, but it's not the most prosperous part of Georgia by any means. And maybe just to build up had just been enough for her. Maybe she just sit there and says, hey, look, I mean, she's like in her late 40s. In a way that you and I had at that time in our lives, maybe she had the thing is, what am I doing with myself? Why am I giving my allegiance to these people who literally don't give a shit about me? And that's what the Republicans in Congress, she found out ahead of what they're all finding out now. And this is what's really at it. Trump does not give a shit about the Republican Party. Trump does not give a shit about the Republicans in Congress or anything else. He only cares about himself. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene understood that before a lot of other people did. That's my theory.
I absolutely. This is every week. We try to mix it up, James, and someone's asked questions for 3 or 4 weeks. We try to turn to someone else. But our old pal John in Gurnee, Illinois. John, first of all, I learned
we got to get this guy on.
I learned where Gurnee is. It's about 40 miles from Chicago, up in northeast Illinois. John, we're going to get you on the show one of these weeks because you send good questions every week. And he says, in order to win back the citizens who didn't vote in 2024, Democrats need to focus first, second, and third on how to help their economic stress. Absolutely right, John. And then he asks, is government bureaucracy too slow to immediately impact prices and get people real help?
Yeah, it is. Look, one of the things that we talk about the cost of living, affordability. There's 2 ways you can deal with affordability. You can try to get prices down. You can increase supply. You can do all that. And I mean, it's tough, but they raise interest rates or they have monetary policy. The other thing that you can address it with is increase wages. Okay, what you pay is relative to what you make. And how do you could raise the minimum wage, which would have some effect on a lot of these companies pay $3, $4 over the minimum wage. To raise the son of a bitch to $20, okay? Make a statement. America needs a raise. I don't think we've raised the minimum wage since 2000, 15 years now.
7, I think.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's been forever, the real value of it. And the second thing is maybe you could have some kind of a tax break for employers that increase wages. I don't know, but this cost of living, this affordability seems to me like it's going to be with us for a while. And, you could, there's several ways you can attack it, but one of the ways is you can pay people more. And if you want to know the rage in this country since, let's just say 2009, is a starting point in 2010. And you look at corporate profits growth and look at hourly wage growth, I'm just going to say that the economic system in the United States has got to change, and it's gone way too far in favoring old people, favoring savers, favoring homeowners, favoring all the stuff that we are, and it's screwed this younger generation. And I'm telling you, I'd say the same thing to anybody is you better fix this or it's going to get fixed for you, and it's going to be ugly when it gets fixed for you. The people are tired of it. Just build it up.
Yeah.
And I think the Democrats, as I pointed out in the piece, is quit fucking around with all this cultural stuff and start talking about people's wages, start talking about what we can do to protect people who are trying to make it, and particularly young people. Young people can't get a fucking job right now. It's just unbelievable.
Megan in Fort Myers asks, why is Lindsey Graham such a lapdog to Trump? Can I only assume Trump has something on him? I don't know that Trump has anything on Lindsey Graham or not. It's been around for a long time and everything. But I'll tell you something about Lindsey Graham. He's very needy. He really needs a big brother, a mentor, whatever have you. John McCain served that purpose for 16 or 17 years. And then when John died, he just turned to Trump. And he is wholly owned now by Trump. If Donald Trump eloped with a sheep, Lindsey Graham would say it shows what a great champion of animal rights he is. He's put any conscience he ever had in a blind trust. And all he has is his Senate career in politics and his desperation to be a player. So he has become a wholly owned Trump subsidiary. And it really is kind of personally sad.
I guess I know him, casually, but
yeah,
and
me
he's
too.
kind of a nice guy to be he's a comical figure. He's like the Trump people don't like him. The Trump in his rally, I guess some few years ago, was running for re-election. Trump and the Republicans were booing him. Trump said, "Oh no, he's a good guy. Put his arm around him." And of course, the Democrats can't stand him because they think he's just some phony baloney. At some level, you almost feel sorry for the guy because you know that everybody's laughing at him. I mean, we laugh at him, they laugh at him, Trump laughs at him, the crowds laugh at him, and he's just desperate to hold that Senate seat. He don't care. He'll do whatever he can. He can't envision life outside the Senate, and he's comically compromising.
Sure is. David in Lawrence, Kansas, home to the second or third best basketball arena in America, behind Cameron and maybe the Palestra. David says, instead of demanding release of the Epstein files, shouldn't we be demanding to see the contents of the Epstein safe?
Well, you asked the correct question because we know that Michael Wolff said that in that safe, Epstein pulled out pictures of him and Trump with some scantily clad young females, and that Trump had a stain on his trousers. One has to assume that, no reason to think Michael was not telling the truth, that when his apartment, a condo, a mansion was raided, they took everything out of his safe and they did an inventory. My theory is that exists. My theory is you asked the right question. Absolute right question.
Well, I don't have any confidence in Michael Wolff, but I think that story is true. But my worry, David, would be that who has those pictures now? Who got that safe? The FBI got them. Cash Patel's FBI has them. So my guess is if there were any really incriminating pictures, not my guess, my fear, my hunch would be that they may be at the bottom of the Potomac River. And anyway, you're right. You did ask the right question. We're finally getting outside the United States, James. Brett in Alberta, Canada.
All right.
Brett in Alberta, Canada says, should we be cozying up to the Saudis? Brett, I thought the spectacle of MBS, a murder, and Trump last week was just sickening. As I said, we have to deal with the Saudis. There's no question they're an important player in that region. For those who think that they're the future, I am skeptical for a number of reasons. First of all, a government that runs like that, I think, is going to be hard to really become the future. But more than that, I've only been there one time. But it is a country without a really strong work ethic, without a strong sense of innovation. They import people to do everything. So I think they got lots of money, got lots of oil money. But I don't overplay your Saudi hand, U.S.
Yeah, obviously they're a huge player. Look, I think this guy's at some level is probably trying to deal with that. The stuff what they did to Khashoggi, it just what Putin proves, the Saudis prove, but everybody proves is we all go, oh, hoo-ha, they'll do this. We're committed. What they did to this journalist, we'll never forget. Justice will rain down on them. Nothing. All right. And at some point, I mean, but I don't want to hate to say this, but at some point, we're going to have to make a stand. And we certainly didn't make one against the Saudis. We certainly didn't make one against the Russians. But this could do nothing but increase aggressiveness and increase things that these totalitarian regimes want to do and how we accept it. It's very, very, very troubling. Very troubling.
Yeah, it sure is. James, we're going to bring this back full circle to our Tom Edsall conversation. Jim in Rosemont, Pennsylvania, that's my neck of the woods. That's where I grew up. Jim asked you, what do you think of Mondami's meeting with Trump?
Well, okay, thank you, Jim. Because remember I was telling you about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Trump hates, they have figured this out. Who really got screwed big time by the Trump-Mondami love fest? All right, who is the big loser in this? I'll tell you who it was. The Murdoch Empire. All right, the New York Post had a negative Mondami story about it for the last month of the campaign. Every other word on Fox News is Mondami this, Mondami that. All right, you wouldn't even know that we won elections anyway. So what does this do? It completely takes it away. So if you go on Fox, and I tell Democrats too, and they bring up Mondami and say, well, ask Trump. I think Trump was more favorable to him than I was. He's completely screwed them. He undercut their whole argument. Oh, well, yeah, they did well, but look at Mondami. He's the face of the party. He's a socialist. He ought to be deported. He shouldn't even be in the United States. And then Trump comes in and says, I think I'd live in New York. I think it's going to be a great state city. But he screwed his own people. He hates his own kind. Marjorie Taylor Greene figured that out. Rupert, call Marge. She can explain it to you. He don't like you. He don't like your network. He don't like the Republican Party. The only thing that Donald Trump likes or is loyal to is fucking money. And that's it. And you better realize that quickly. And he just screwed all of you. He really did.
Also at the top of that list, along with the Murdochs, is Elise Stefanik, who richly deserves it. Her whole gubernatorial campaign was running against Mondami. Sorry, Elise. You may want to go back to being a moderate Republican.
Yeah, he does not like you. Mike Johnson, he hates you. He don't like you. He'll do anything he can. He thinks you're pathetic. He thinks the whole thing. You think he gives a shit what John Thune thinks? Oh, come on. Be serious.
All right, everybody. This is great. Keep those questions coming in. If we didn't get to yours this week, we'll work on getting to it next week. And I just want to say to everyone out there, to our listeners who we really have incredible affection for, have a happy Thanksgiving today. Eat heartily, but cautiously. And we can't wait to talk to you again next week. Thank you for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd appreciate it if you'd check out the links to our sponsor, Miracle Made, and our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them because when you do, it helps make this podcast happen. Now, to keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go take a look. You can also find other shows you might enjoy on the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. Remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.